There was a shriek, followed by a splash, and then a weird electric whine that ended with a loud, satisfying pop. I didn't even bother to check. I already knew what had just happened. Karen's beloved little flying peeping Dave had taken a nosedive straight into her pool like a drone-shaped torpedo, and all because I'd finally had enough of being treated like a zoo exhibit in my own backyard. But let's rewind about 3 weeks, back when this ridiculous saga began, with a bratwurst, an ice-cold soda, and what I assumed was an innocent barbecue that somehow shattered Karen's ever-changing rulebook of suburban serenity. It was one of those picture-perfect Saturdays, warm and still, practically begging for burgers, lawn chairs, and a bit of background music. Rachel, my wife, had just wrapped up prepping the side dishes while I was manning the grill like I was auditioning for Grill Masters, Suburb Edition. Our teenage daughter, Sophie, had her earbuds in and was curled up on the patio swing with a book, soaking up the peace before high school chaos returned. Then came the sound, a high-pitched whirring, steady and obnoxiously loud, inching closer like a mosquito with a mission. I looked up, and there it was, a shiny black quadcopter, floating about 25 feet above us, its camera tilted down like it was filming some dystopian backyard reality show. I just stood there, spatula in hand, watching it hover like it owned the air, wondering if maybe some kid was goofing off. But then the drone crept in tighter, drifting just above our fence line, and the lens zoomed, not on me or the burgers, but straight onto Sophie, who had no clue she was now part of Karen's Big Brother audition. That was it. My dad instincts kicked in hard. I waved at the thing and even shouted up at it, but it just twitched a little, then floated toward the big oak tree at the edge of our yard. I followed it, trying to get a fix on where it would land, and sure enough, it zipped right back toward the oversized 2-story on the corner. Karen's house, of course. Every neighborhood has that one control freak. Ours? We got Karen. She ran the HOA with the grace and empathy of a maximum security prison warden. If your grass was 3/4 inch too tall, bam, citation. If your flag had the wrong shade of blue, fine. Throw a birthday party with 8 balloons instead of 5, emergency HOA summit. Karen didn't just crave control. She breathed it in like oxygen. And now, apparently, she'd moved on from ground rules to airspace dominance. That night, I walked up to her door and knocked, trying to keep things civil. She answered with her signature frozen smile, and a wine glass so large it could double as a punch bowl. Her hair was stick straight, unmoving in the breeze, and her face didn't flinch when I said, "Hey, I think your drone flew over our backyard this afternoon." "I know," she replied without even a blink. "Just a little neighborhood safety flyby. Someone's been leaving their trash cans out too long. Could be a health hazard." "Uh-huh," I said, trying to keep calm. Except it hovered over my daughter. "That's not a safety check, Karen. That's surveillance." She took a slow sip of her wine and tilted her head like she was humoring a child. "Well, if there's nothing to hide, why be bothered? Besides, it's legal. It's not like I crash-landed it in your yard." Then she shut the door in my face like I was the one being rude. I walked back home, absolutely livid. Rachel took one look at me and could tell something was up. "She really said that?" I nodded, jaw clenched. Sophie glanced up from the couch, her expression uneasy. "That drone was flying near my window earlier. That's not okay." By Monday, the passive-aggressive war had officially begun. Our first HOA violation in months showed up taped to the mailbox. Improper grill cover, non-compliant fabric. It was from Home Depot. It was canvas. I almost laughed, but I knew it was just her opening move. Over the next few days, the citations came in like junk mail. Garden tools visible from the curb. Decorative rock not pre-approved. Unauthorized winch heem, and I swear, I still don't know what a winch heem is. Every time we stepped outside, we heard it. That buzz, always nearby, always watching. Rachel stopped hanging clothes on the line. Sophie began shutting her curtains every night. Even the neighbors' kids quit running through sprinklers. They didn't want to be background actors in Karen's spy thriller. We weren't just being harassed. We were under 24/7 suburban surveillance. So I started digging. Didn't take long to find Karen's drone online, a high-end surveillance quadcopter loaded with real-time streaming, programmable flight paths, and enough range to scout the whole neighborhood. That wasn't a toy. That was a flying privacy invasion machine. And that's when it hit me. Karen didn't just want to uphold the rules. She was building her own petty dictatorship in the sky. And we were her unwilling test subjects. What she didn't know, what no one around here knew, was that I spent 6 years working on counter-surveillance tech for government contractors. I didn't just understand how drones worked. I helped design the tools to jam them, hijack them, even turn them into paperweights mid-flight. I left that life behind for something quieter. But now, it felt like I was being dragged back into a battle I didn't ask for, but was fully prepared to win. That night, I dusted off my old gear in the garage. Opening that toolbox felt like shaking hands with an old. Signal detectors, frequency modulators, directional jammers, it was all still there, waiting. Karen wanted a tech war? Fine, but I wasn't going to break the law. Just bend it, very uncomfortably. The next morning, her drone made its usual appearance. I kicked back under the patio umbrella with a smoothie in one hand and my laptop in the other, while it hovered overhead like some nosy hawk. I triggered a light jamming pulse. Just a quick blip. The drone twitched like it had hiccups, dropped a foot, then steadied itself again. Karen was probably watching the feed, losing her mind. I turned off the signal and took another sip like I didn't have a care in the world. Later that day, a neighborhood-wide email from Karen hit my inbox. Attention all residents. Possible foreign interference with our security systems. Be alert. Report unusual tech behavior. I nearly choked on my coffee. She was spiraling, and this was only the beginning. Rachel asked if I was planning to report her. I said no. Reporting her would just get buried in her own HOA bureaucracy. If I wanted to win, I had to beat her at her own game, with subtlety, strategy, and just the right amount of static. Karen had forgotten that when you crown yourself queen of a cul-de-sac, you also paint a big old bullseye on your back. She'd crossed a line, and now she was going to find out what happens when the quiet guy next door isn't just handy with a grill, but also trained in electronic warfare. That drone was coming back tomorrow, and this time it wasn't leaving in one piece. For the next 2 nights, I studied its flight like I was tracking a hurricane. Its route was nearly robotic. Same loop, same times, same obnoxious buzzing. Every morning like clockwork, right around 9 a.m. after the school buses rolled out, and again just before 3:30 p.m., like a creepy encore, that drone would take flight. It would cruise lazily over our cul-de-sac, making slow, creepy loops, like it was on a stakeout for the HOA secret police. It always dipped lower, near the same problem houses, places with a crooked mailbox, a lawn gnome, or heaven forbid, hedges that looked a little too free-spirited. But my place? Oh, we got the VIP treatment. That drone would loiter above our deck like it paid rent, sometimes circling twice, like it was double-checking for violations I hadn't invented yet. Karen wasn't out here documenting community offenses. She was nursing a personal vendetta, and my roof was her favorite target. I started logging everything. Even pulled out my old visual rangefinder from my signal diagnostics days. Real nerdy stuff, but it worked like a charm. Turns out, her airborne tattletale was flying between 35 to 45 feet off the ground. Technically, still within legal limits depending on the state, but shady as hell when you're doing it without permission. And that's exactly what this was. Unauthorized, obsessive air harassment. What really made me pause was how Karen never let her drone stray far from her property line. It always stayed within 3 houses of her front steps, like she wanted it close enough to call back in case it had a mechanical tantrum. That little detail told me one big thing. She wasn't automating this. Nope. She was flying it manually, probably from that upstairs lair she calls a living room. Some drones follow pre-programmed paths, but not this one. It turned and reacted way too fast, like Karen had it synced up to her joystick and a mug of Chardonnay, which gave me an opening. If she was piloting in real time, I could mess with the signal during her commands, just enough to make her sweat, not enough to crash it. Yet. The first test went beautifully. I hit the jammer and that thing freaked out, dropped a foot like it saw a ghost, spun left, then barely recovered. She probably thought it was just bad Wi-Fi or a rogue breeze. I gave it a couple days before I tried again. Had to let the suspense build. And sure enough, Karen's paranoia started bubbling over. She fired off another HOA-wide email, warning us that digital infiltrators might be compromising our community's security grid. Like some Russian hacker had their sights set on our cul-de-sac's lawn care violations. And because paranoia loves company, she went full techno-Karen. 2 brand new cameras showed up on her porch, and a third popped up on a metal pole in the backyard. Infrared, motion sensitive, probably coded to alert her every time a squirrel twitched. She was waging war on a ghost, but I wasn't the only one noticing the neighborhood turning into a surveillance theme park. One afternoon, while I was cleaning out the gutters, my neighbor Dave wandered over. Now, Dave's a quiet guy, minds his own business. Definitely not the tinfoil hat type. But he leaned in and whispered, "Hey, has that flying thing ever hovered over your grill? I swear it caught me shirtless last week. Gotta complain about my unruly appearance." I kept my reply vague, but the look on his face said it all. This wasn't just my fight anymore. The whole street was starting to feel like an aquarium, and Karen, she was the giant eye behind the glass. So I got to work on phase 2. I built a directional jammer that looked like an innocent wooden birdhouse and plopped it right on our patio railing. To the untrained eye, it was just a chubby robin frozen in time, but inside, I'd tucked a frequency disruptor capable of frying signals in a tight 60-foot cone. Still legal. Barely, as long as I avoided emergency and commercial channels. I'd already run it at half power and watched Karen's drone twitch like it had the hiccups. Now it was time to crank it up. Next morning, just like clockwork, her buzzing little pest floated into range. I sipped my coffee and waited until it reached the sweet spot. Then I flicked the switch. The drone jerked midair like it had hit an invisible brick wall, spun in a panic, then wobbled around like it was drunk. I let it flail for 5 seconds, then turned the jammer off. It paused, reoriented, and hightailed it back toward her house like a spooked raccoon. I could just picture Karen staring at her screen, mashing buttons, and yelling at her controller like it had betrayed her. And then, boom, a glorious HOA-wide email with the subject line, "Strange Interference Event." She claimed someone was actively attempting to undermine neighborhood safety protocols. She even attached blurry, overexposed screenshots of her drone's final seconds near my grill and birdhouse. No people, no proof, just desperation wrapped in pixelated paranoia, and I knew she was teetering right on the edge. By Saturday, Karen had jumped off the deep end completely. She hired a private security firm to slap a big antenna on her roof, probably paid for by some shady neighborhood enhancement fund. I caught the van pulling up and took a few pictures for the scrapbook. When I asked one of the installers what they were putting up, he muttered something about signal boosters and connectivity optimization. Translation? She was trying to supercharge her drone so it could withstand whatever I threw at it, and maybe spy on 3 more houses while she was at it. But I wasn't sitting still either. That night, Rachel and I sat on the porch under the stars, sipping tea while I showed her the jam logs on my laptop. She gave me a look and raised an eyebrow. "You're treating this like a mission," she said. "That's because it is," I replied. She declared war on privacy. We're not her neighbors anymore. We're her surveillance subjects. Rachel shook her head slowly. "Just be careful. Crazy people get dangerous when they feel like they're losing. And boy, was she right. The next morning, Karen's drone showed up with a new party trick. It had a tiny speaker duct taped to its belly, and as it hovered near our porch, it blared a crackly, pre-recorded message. "This is private property. Please comply with HOA regulations," in Karen's voice, amplified, echoing like some deranged floating Alexa. Sophie came flying out of the house, eyebrows sky high. "Is that drone talking now? What is this, a flying Karen?" I couldn't help but laugh, even as my blood pressure spiked. That was the moment I knew. Karen wasn't just power tripping. She was unhinged. This wasn't about rules anymore. It was about control, dominance, and ego. I wasn't dealing with some clipboard warrior. I was dealing with a woman who thought privacy was optional for everyone except herself. So I decided my next test would be the last. I upgraded the jammer to a full-fledged signal suppressor, using old test equipment that was inactive in the commercial bands. It wouldn't just block her commands. It would hijack them and reroute them to a fantasy world where Karen's drone couldn't tell up from down. Instead of flying home, it'd circle a loop until it hit fail-safe mode, or better yet, a watery grave. I scouted the perfect crash zones, puddles, gutters, her koi pond that she bragged about like it was Versailles. But the best choice, the most poetic, her pool, the same backyard fortress she guarded like it was Buckingham Palace. I dialed in the settings, adjusted the birdhouse transmitter, and mapped the route. Karen wanted a drone war? She was about to lose a soldier. All I needed now was just one last sweep, just one last time for Karen's oversized ego to push that drone a little too far. The stars really aligned because the next HOA board meeting landed on a Wednesday. The exact same day, her drone went full military patrol mode and did its longest, creepiest loop yet. I'd been watching the clock all day, like a kid waiting for recess. This meeting wasn't going to be a shouting match. It was going to be a perfectly timed, popcorn-worthy performance. Karen thought she had mastered the art of community manipulation. She had no idea she'd just walked onto a chessboard where I'd already planned 12 moves ahead. I didn't come to argue. I came to end her suburban dictatorship, and I brought the checkmate on a USB stick in my back pocket. The meeting was held at the local rec center. You know, the same place where we usually sip cider and pretend to like each other at holiday parties. Only this time, the vibe was all business and no gingerbread. Karen marched in like she was delivering a keynote address at some evil overlord's convention, rocking her signature smug face. A tablet under her arm, and an outfit that screamed corporate villain with a clipboard. She didn't greet a single soul, just beelined for the front like she owned the place. The board members looked stiff, real tense. Word about the drone had leaked beyond the usual gossip circles. People were whispering. Folks were uncomfortable. Karen felt it too, but instead of retreating, she doubled down. "Let's begin," she announced with a dramatic clap. Like she was calling a Broadway show to order. And yes, she actually referred to her drone as an aerial safety device. I nearly choked. Before she could get rolling, I stood up from the second row and said calmly, "Before we get into that, I've got something I think the board and everyone here should see." Her eyebrow lifted like she smelled something unpleasant. "Mr. Nash," she said, tightening her jaw, "unless you've submitted a motion to be added to the agenda." "Nope," I replied, walking up to the projector and sliding in my USB. "But this is about neighborhood safety, which I know you're very passionate about." She gave me the glare of death, but she was curious enough to let it happen. The lights dimmed, and the screen lit up with a reel I'd stitched together over the last 10 days, clips gathered from neighbors, all of whom were more than happy to help. Video after video rolled, her drone hovering inches above backyard fences, peering into second-story windows, creeping low enough to freak out family pets. And in one especially damning clip, circling a kid's birthday party, one father could be heard yelling, "What the hell is that thing doing near my kid?" Another video showed the drone hovering over a trampoline while 3 children bounced underneath it. You could feel the air get sucked out of the room. Then, the final nail. Footage from my own house. Karen, sitting comfortably in her living room, controller in hand, while her drone hovered directly outside my daughter's bedroom window. The timestamp and GPS data glowed in the corner, like a neon sign that said busted. Gasps rippled across the room. Lisa, one of the quieter board members, leaned forward and squinted. "Karen, is that your living room?" Karen's smile didn't budge, but her eyes got sharp. "That footage is being taken out of context," she snapped. "I was surveying the area for safety concerns. That falls well within HOA guidelines." Dave, my neighbor, piped up from the back. "Since when does the HOA control airspace?" Carol followed, arms crossed. "You flew over my hot tub at night. Are you going to say that was a safety inspection too?" Karen's voice climbed into dog whistle territory. "The drone is a tool. If people feel uncomfortable, maybe they should consider what they're doing that draws attention." That earned a full-blown wave of horrified murmurs and a couple audible gasps. Even her usual board buddies looked like they wanted to slide under the table. She'd gone from control freak to full-on creeper in 5 minutes flat. Then, the board president, Richard, a guy who avoids conflict like it's made of poison ivy, cleared his throat. "Karen, based on what we've seen, we'll need a private board discussion about whether your authority has overstepped its boundaries." Karen shot up so fast, her chair toppled backward and clattered on the floor. "This is a setup. You're all falling for some vendetta cooked up by a tech head with too much free time." I just shrugged. Or maybe we're just sick of being watched while we mow our lawns and grill our dinner. She didn't respond. She didn't even stay. Just spun on her heels and stormed out, heels clicking like gunshots, leaving behind silence and a stunned room. That probably should have been the end. But let's be honest, I wasn't done yet. I didn't spend weeks building a jammer, mapping flight paths, and rerouting signals just to watch her stomp off in a dramatic huff. Nope, Karen needed to feel it. To experience the same gut-punch invasion she dished out to everyone else. And I had the perfect idea. The next night was sticky hot, one of those evenings where the air clings to your skin. From my backyard shadows, I could see her pool lit up like a resort, and Karen lounging on a flamingo float, sipping something colorful. Her drone buzzed lazily just above the fence line, doing another one of her creepy patrols. I was set up with my laptop open, jammer live, telemetry on full display. That stupid speaker she attached to the drone was still active too, spitting out warped, staticky bits of her own voice. Only now, she sounded slightly tipsy. Probably had an extra core or 3. I flipped on the signal spoofer. The drone twitched, then started drifting, subtle at first like it was daydreaming. I mimicked her usual manual controls, nudging it softly, step by step toward the deep end of her sacred pool. She didn't notice right away, too busy on her phone, bobbing along like nothing was amiss. Then the buzz got louder, right over her head. She looked up and her face morphed into pure panic. "What the? No, back up," she shrieked, wobbling to her feet on that poor inflatable flamingo. The drone jerked again, spinning like it had just downed 3 rum shots. I gave the final nudge, and with a beautiful splash, it dropped right into the center of her pool, sending a wave across the water and dousing her in the process. She yelped, slipped, and flopped into the shallow end like a dramatic soap opera character. The drone's red light blinked twice, then faded into watery doom. I shut my laptop and smiled like a man who just saw karma deliver a pizza. The next morning, Karen didn't do her usual HOA rounds. No porch sweeping, no clipboard patrol, just silence. And for the first time in a long while, it was bliss. No emails, no threats, no surveillance buzz overhead, just pure golden silence. Word got around faster than Karen's gossip chain. Some neighbors whispered that the drone malfunctioned and decided to take a swan dive. Others called it karma with wings. A few joked that maybe the drone had finally gained self-awareness and tried to escape its toxic owner. But one thing was for sure, nobody missed it. That constant buzzing was gone, and for the first time in weeks, the air felt breathable again. And me? I finally got to enjoy a cup of coffee on my porch without checking the skies like I was living in a spy thriller. But the fallout from that pool crash? Way bigger than I'd expected. Karen went full radio silent for 3 solid days. No clipboard patrols, no passive-aggressive bulletins, not even a quote-unquote community health update. For someone who usually ruled our block like a tiara-wearing tyrant, the quiet was unsettling. People started whispering. Maybe she'd finally quit. Maybe the drone's watery grave had humbled her. But come on, this was Karen. Admitting defeat wasn't in her DNA. She was the kind of person who simmers like a covered pot on high heat, silent at first until the steam blows the lid off. Sure enough, on day 5, she blew. It started with a flurry of 6:30 a.m. emails clogging everyone's inbox. She accused multiple neighbors of orchestrating a coordinated attack on her property. She called it drone sabotage, an act so made up it sounded like a rejected CSI episode. She demanded immediate action from the board, tossing around phrases like intentional airspace interference and acts of digital sabotage. Honestly, the whole thing read like she'd watched too many Cold War documentaries and drank too much boxed wine. I half expected her to start referencing espionage, sleeper agents, and encrypted law gnome signals. She was unraveling. And let's not forget, this wasn't some toy from a hobby store. Her drone had been top tier, GPS-enabled, panoramic cameras, long-range controller, the whole paranoid package. Its crash had destroyed more than hardware. It shattered her pride. And even though everyone already knew what had happened, Karen tried to rewrite the narrative. She marched from house to house, waving thick, stapled evidence packets like they were subpoenas. They were full of nonsense, technical mumbo-jumbo she clearly Googled at 2 a.m., trying and failing to sound like she knew how frequencies worked. Lisa, the board treasurer, straight up laughed in her face and said, "Karen, your drone went for a swim. That's not sabotage. That's gravity." That only made her spin harder. She actually called the cops. Yep. Karen reported her drone's mysterious downing as a crime. According to my neighbor Dave, the responding officer struggled to keep a straight face while she ranted about hostile frequency disruption. But the cherry on top? The drone's memory card was toast, completely fried from its pool bath. No data, no footage, just a sad, soggy shell and a crispy little circuit board. Any dreams she had of using it to build a case or play victim? Gone. By now, her whole neighborhood was watching like it was a reality show. Except it wasn't funny anymore. It was starting to get weird. A few folks gently suggested maybe she take a break, possibly a vacation. But Karen wasn't built for vacations. She was built for vendettas, so she doubled down again, this time with flyers, printed, laminated, taped to lampposts, trash bins, and even a few unfortunate mailboxes. Each one featured blurry screenshots of her downed drone, overlaid in dramatic red letters, "Sabotage is a crime." Beneath it, a quote from some dusty HOA clause about community safety responsibilities. It was like a ransom note, if the hostage was her dignity. But the real showstopper came a few days later. Karen demanded an emergency HOA meeting to address ongoing acts of hostility and anti-authority behavior. The meeting was held outside near the clubhouse lawn, and I swear half the neighborhood showed up with popcorn and camping chairs. It looked less like a meeting and more like a live taping of HOA Gone Wild. Karen stood behind a wobbly folding table, flanked by laminated printouts, like she was giving a PowerPoint at a conspiracy convention. And then, drumroll, she held up a blown-up photo of my patio birdhouse. This, she announced, jabbing at it like it was Exhibit A in a federal trial, is not a birdhouse. It is a signal disruptor. This is what brought down my drone. I didn't even flinch. That's a birdhouse, I said calmly. Unless you think the robins have developed Wi-Fi jamming tech. A ripple of laughter rolled through the crowd. Karen's face flushed deep red, but she kept pushing forward. She launched into some wild theory that someone, maybe me, maybe a group, was running a covert operation to strip her of her HOA authority. But the crowd wasn't buying it. People were tired of being watched, tired of being policed. And now that the drone was gone, they realized just how tense life under Karen's rule had become. Then, in perfect comedic timing, Carol, from 2 streets over, raised her hand. "Karen," she asked, "were you the one flying the drone over my bathroom window last month?" Karen froze like someone hit the mute button. Carol continued, "I thought I was going crazy, but now I'm pretty sure it was your drone. I was brushing my teeth. We made eye contact." The crowd erupted, not because it was funny, but because it was so ridiculous that laughter was the only sane reaction. The idea that Karen had accidentally peeped on people while playing HOA air marshal was horrifying and weirdly poetic. That moment, that's when the tide officially turned. Richard, the board president, the same guy who usually acted like confrontation would give him hives, stood up. "Karen," he said gently but firmly, "you were never authorized to use drones for surveillance. What you did crossed the line. There are laws, there are boundaries, and you violated both." Karen tried to argue, but it was like shouting into a vacuum. Nobody cared anymore. Her power was gone. The board took a vote right then and there. Karen's HOA privileges suspended. Her newsletter access revoked. Her reign over. She was, for the first time in a decade, just another resident. The next morning, the official HOA email came, not from Karen's account, but from Richard's. Subject line: Privacy Policy Update. Effective immediately, all drone surveillance over private property was banned. Residents had a right to privacy, and no one, not even board members, could use drones for monitoring or enforcement. At the bottom of the message, in parentheses, was a new nickname for the rule, also known as the Karen Clause. The neighborhood went nuts. People were cracking jokes left and right. One guy painted "Karen Clause compliant" on his mailbox. Someone else made a t-shirt with a red drone crossed out and the words "Privacy Matters." Even the robins seemed happier. And me? I finally got to sit outside with a bratwurst and a cold soda, knowing the skies were mine again. Karen had tried to rule from above, but in the end, gravity and a little creative justice brought her back down to earth. Someone placed a tiny plastic drone right in the middle of the community garden, with a cardboard sign next to it that read "Rest in Pieces." Another neighbor changed their Wi-Fi name to "Enemy Frequency." And Dave, he really outdid himself. He made a fake HOA badge with a birdhouse on it and wore it proudly during his morning walk, like he was on patrol for the resistance. As for Karen, she vanished. Her blinds stayed closed, her porch went dark, and her usual 6 a.m. trash bin patrols, gone. No emails, no complaints, not even a snarky reminder about recycling schedules. Nobody knew if it was shame, fury, or some toxic combo of both. But honestly, nobody really cared. What mattered was that she was gone, in every way that actually counted. It wasn't just her drone that crashed. It was the entire illusion of power she'd clung to for years. Her grip on the neighborhood didn't unravel because someone yelled louder. It unraveled because she exposed herself. All I had to do was give her a little nudge towards self-destruction, and gravity took care of the rest. In the stillness that followed, the whole neighborhood seemed to breathe again. No buzzing above our heads, no distorted voice clips floating down from the sky, no citations for wind chimes, lawn gnomes, or whimsical flower beds. People started planting again, talking again, laughing again. Kids ran barefoot, porch swings creaked with conversation. And for the first time in a long time, the air felt like it belonged to us. It wasn't just that Karen had lost her drone. It was that she'd lost her chokehold on the soul of the neighborhood. All that low-key fear, the tension of what if she reports me for, poof, gone. Kids were shooting hoops in driveways again without checking the sky. Someone painted their fence bright teal and not a single HOA soldier knocked. Dave, he threw back-to-back backyard barbecues. You're the sound of laughter carried halfway down the block. The silence Karen left behind? It got filled with something way better, joy. About a month later, the HOA board decided to host a special event called Neighborhood Unity Day. Part peace offering, part potluck, part excuse to eat pie in public. Whatever it was, it worked. Everyone showed up. Families brought casseroles. The kids chased each other with water guns. And for the first time in forever, the atmosphere felt easy. Rachel and I set up a cornhole game with Sophie, and you know what? Not once did I look up expecting to see a drone. About halfway through the event, Richard grabbed the mic. He cleared his throat like he was announcing a raffle. Before we wrap up, he said, we'd like to recognize someone who made an creative contribution to neighborhood peace and privacy. He held up a shiny little trophy. It was shaped like a cartoonish drone, googly eyes, crooked propellers and all. The base read, for outstanding service in aerial pest control, Jake Miller. The crowd lost it. Laughter, clapping, someone even whistled. Rachel nudged me forward, and I walked up stunned, grinning like an idiot. I gave a mock salute, which only made the laughter louder. From the crowd, someone yelled, "Don't let him near your sprinklers. He'll turn them into laser cannons." It was all in good fun, but I could feel the message beneath it. We saw what you did, and we're thankful. Not just for jamming a drone, but for standing up when no one else dared to. Even Karen's husband, Steve, gave me a slow, tired nod from across the park. He looked like a man who'd aged a decade in a month. Rumor had it he'd been begging her to ditch the drone obsession long before the crash. Now, he mostly walked the dog alone, kept his head down, and didn't say much. Whether he felt relief, guilt, or just plain exhaustion, I couldn't tell, but he didn't argue anymore. And that said enough. That evening, Rachel and I sat out on the porch, watching the sky burn orange as the sun dipped down. Sophie was inside, giggling on a video call, probably showing off the drone trophy and retelling the saga like it was a summer blockbuster. Rachel leaned back and sighed. "It's wild, isn't it?" she said. "All of this started with a barbecue." I smiled. "A drone that didn't know when to quit." She raised an eyebrow. "Do you regret any of it?" I thought for a second. Not a bit. Someone had to remind her that privacy still matters, and that control has a shelf life. Rachel laughed so hard she nearly spilled her lemonade. "You really planned that belly flop, didn't you?" "Every inch of it," I said proudly. The next morning, I rolled a dusty box out of the garage. It was a side project Sophie and I had started months ago and forgotten about, a build-your-own drone kit. But this one wasn't for spying. No cameras, no speakers, no HOA enforcement. This drone was made for snacks. That's right, Sophie's brilliant idea, a snack delivery drone. It had a little basket slung underneath, just big enough for a juice box or a granola bar. We'd programmed it to hover low and gently drop its goodies in the backyard. I fired it up and let it lift off, watching it do a lazy leap above the lawn. Sophie squealed and ran outside, hands up like it was a candy drop from the sky. The drone dropped a granola bar near her feet, and she clapped like it was the best thing ever. And in that moment, watching her laugh, I felt it, that weird, deep pride. Because where Karen used tech to control, we were using it to connect. It wasn't about the drone. It never had been. It was about who was holding the co. Around noon, Dave strolled over, grinning, a package in hand. "Hey, Jake, you got a sec?" He handed me a small wooden plaque, laser engraved on the front, a picture of a birdhouse with the words, "For tactical bravery in the face of HOA tyranny." I nearly dropped it from laughing so hard. "You made this?" I asked, turning the plaque over in my hands, still grinning. Dave puffed out his chest a little. "Made it, sanded it, varnished it, even thought about adding blinking LEDs. but figured subtlety might land better. By then, the Karen saga had become something of a suburban legend. New families moving in would whisper, "Wait, you were part of the drone thing?" Like they were meeting local folklore heroes. Somebody even suggested making it our next Halloween theme. Kids dressed up as buzzing drones, decorative birdhouses, or furious clipboard-wielding HOA villains. It was funny because, well, it had actually happened. Karen herself, still technically alive and kicking, still technically a resident, but she'd become more of a ghost than a presence. Her curtains never opened. Her lawn looked like it was losing a slow war against nature. And her mailbox, overflowing with junk mail she never bothered to check. It was like the neighborhood just moved on without her. The HOA board eventually made everything official. They rewrote the rules from top to bottom. No surveillance gear allowed unless the whole community signed off. No more weaponized citations unless a real human, with real eyes, actually witnessed something. And drones? Banned. Flat out. No loopholes, no exceptions. The new policy even had a nickname, the Karen Clause. New residents didn't always get the joke, but those of us who lived through it, we chuckled every time it came up. As for me, I went back to enjoying the little things. Mowing the lawn without being filmed from the sky. Drinking coffee without wondering if my hanging fern was going to earn me a violation. And most of all, feeling like I owned my house again, instead of being managed by a flying tattletale. One night, just before heading to bed, I spotted her, Karen, standing alone in her driveway, staring up at the sky like she was waiting for something. She looked smaller somehow, tired, worn down, like someone had spent years trying to control the world around her, only to end up completely alone in it. I almost raised a hand to wave, but before I could, she turned quietly and went back inside. Rachel came out to join me a few minutes later, pulling her cardigan tighter around her. "You think she'll try something again?" she asked softly. I shook my head. She had her moment, built a throne out of paranoia, and turned herself into a cautionary tale. If she ever tries to reclaim the crown, the whole neighborhood's ready now. Rachel smiled and leaned her head against my shoulder. "Good," she said with a sigh, "because I really like the peace." And honestly, so did I. And this time, it actually felt like it might last. If you like this story, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below this video. We also recommend listening to the story about how Karen bulldozed a guy's fence, even though it was a historical monument, so karma was not long in coming. To listen to this story, just click on the window in the video on the left. Thank you for watching.